Hello, and welcome to the US 275 Scientific Ethics Lecture on Perspective and Controversies. I'm John Hoffman, Professor of Biology and instructor. One of the things that I hope you get out of this course is the opportunity to both kind of appreciate and understand that individuals have very different perspectives, very different backgrounds, and basically they're going to be applying these different perspectives and backgrounds as they look at the world around them and as they interact with people around them as well. So hopefully in this course, you're going to learn that there are people with different perspectives and hopefully be able to begin to understand how those different perspectives contribute or help mold these individuals towards what they're going to be doing in their interactions with you and others. And so a good example of this, probably not a direct example, but a good example of this is the book by John Gray, Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus. And it basically starts out with this kind of little bit of a fable story there that says, once upon a time, Martians and Venusians met, fell in love, and had happy relationships together because they respected and accepted their differences. Then they came to Earth, and amnesia set in, and they forgot they were from different planets. And so basically what John Gray's book is talking about is improving communication within a relationship by recognizing the differences between individuals. And kind of men from one perspective, women from another perspective, kind of a gross oversimplification. But it's a good idea. It's a good idea to try to think about who it is that you're interacting with and what their perspective is as you're working with them. So an important concept with this course then is going to be perspective. So we've got a quote from Oscar Wilde here. The optimist sees the donut, the pessimist sees the whole. And so what we have on the right-hand side of this slide is a little bit of a perspective challenge. You can take a look at it and see what it is that you can see. Take a look at it for a moment. And basically, there are going to be two objects within this. There's a white face, which you can see in the outline there. Or alternatively, you can see two kind of silhouettes of faces looking at each other. So you got the noses here, the lips, kind of looking at the orbit of the eye, the location where the eye is going to be located in this location. And so it's important to realize that individuals with different perspectives can see the object or be in the same situation and look at it very differently. It's also important to recognize that, even though you can see the other's perspective, when you look at this, there's only a very, very small fraction of individuals that can look at an image like this and simultaneously see the base and the two faces together. Most individuals are going to look at it. They're basically going to see how the bases, they may change their mindset slightly and be able to see the faces. But when they see the faces, the base disappears. So again, this is going to be an important concept as we go through the course. I don't want to kind of overwhelm you with these examples, but again, it's important to recognize the perspective is going to be a key aspect of your interactions with people kind of throughout your entire lives, but especially within this course. So this is kind of a little bit more complicated version of the faces and the this one again, a quote from Deepak Chopra, conflicts arise as a result of not understanding that there are as many points of view as there are people. So again, recognize that it's not Men Are From Mars, Venus. That's a dramatic oversimplification. Each individual, based on their background, is going to bring their experiences into a situation, and based on those experiences, based on their mindset, based on their ethical philosophy, which we'll be talking about later on with they're going to kind of mold their opinions, and it's going to control how they're going to be acting with one another. So in this illusion, what we've got, again, it's the base, in this case, kind of here, a kind of goldish, kind of shiny object location here. So you can see the base. You can alternatively see kind of an older woman here, looking at an older man here. So then you've got the eyes, you've got the noses, you've got the lips here, the chin, a little bit of an ear going on over here, at least on the male. But then if you take a look at this from a even slightly different perspective, you can see that you've got a male here with a little bit of a sombrero, playing a guitar, singing to a woman over here. And, you know, she's got a shirt, she's got something up here on her head. And here, instead of looking at this as a head in the face of the man, we're seeing kind of a street scene. So, you know, what was his hair over here is now a little bit of a villa. And his ear is now a woman coming out of a door. So again, this image, more complicated than the previous one, but there are at least 3 different interpretations to what you can see within this optical illusion. And again, we're oversimplifying this a little bit by looking at optical illusions and trying to see the different perspectives. But these types of things are going to be interacting and having an impact on individuals' interactions and lives. Just a final example, just because I thought this was really neat. So we take a look at this perspective. What we see mainly, what we see depends mainly on what we're looking for, John Lubbock. So we're taking a look at this, and you know, for most of us, we take a look at it. We've got an A, we've got a B, and we've got a C. But if we slightly alter our perspective, the same kind of framework that we've got here, now all of a sudden, when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change by way of Dyer. So again, we've got 12, 1, 2, 13, 1, 3, 1, 4 for 14. And so in this direction, we've got, you know, a series of numbers. And we can see that as we kind of alternate in that perspective, you know, we see this structure here in relationship to an A and a C, we're going to put this together as a B. If you take a look at this same structure within 12 and 14, we're going to see this as being the number 13. And, you know, probably spoil the story based on doing that, but, you know, if we put this all together, it kind of blows your mind. We begin to learn wisely when we're willing to see the world from other people's perspective. And so what I did on those 2 previous slides is just crop the image a little bit. So we've got this B or the 13, either in the perspective of the A and the C, or the 12 or the 14. And again, this is like one of those optical illusions. We haven't altered this central object right here, but based on the perspective that we looked at, based on the kind of information that we were working with in that situation, it changed how we interpreted what that object is going to be looking at. See, but at the same time, changing our mindset slightly. It could be 12, 13, 14. And again, this is probably the most important concept that I hope you get out of this course, is recognizing the importance of these different perspectives and the way we interact with one another. And so when you have individuals with different perspectives, you run the risk of having conflict. And so if we take a look at this, again, a couple of good quotes associated with it. Conflict is the beginning of consciousness. So conflict in many ways is basically kind of challenging your perspective, challenging your viewpoint. And that's something you're going to do in college. It's going to be something you do throughout your life, is that you're going to continually to kind of evolve and adapt your interpretation of the world around you based on your own experiences. And then again, recognize that those experiences are going to change you, change your perspective, but hopefully remember that it's important to recognize other perspectives as well. Garth Brooks, famous philosopher and singer, said the greatest conflicts are not between 2 people, but between one person and himself. And so we see that a lot as individuals are getting exposed to different things that they may not have thought about previously, or you know, they're learning new things. And in the process of learning a new thing, you know, it challenges their old understanding, challenges their old perspective. And they've got to alter that perspective in order to be able to move into that new space, that new understanding of what's going to be going and again molded by the perspective and experiences that an individual has. Conflict is inevitable. You know, we are going to have disagreements with one another. I emphasize this within the course. I'm presenting ideas to you in questions and these little essays, group discussions. that are meant to have conflict built in. They're designed to essentially help you explore your own perspective and learn about the perspective of others. So even though, the ideas may appear to be, in conflict with one another, you're not going to completely agree with, what other people in your class have. I hope that you don't completely agree with what I'm saying, because I want to challenge you. So again, Max Lucado, as conflict is inevitable. We're going to have disagreements, but combat is optional. And so again, what I want you to learn within this course and apply within it is that it's very good to have different perspectives. It's ideal to be able to express yourself and express your ideas, and ideally support those ideas with experiences, with information, either from the course or outside of the course, but be able to explain what it is that is the basis for your understanding and your thoughts. But then be open enough to hear the perspectives and the thoughts of others, and recognize that it's fine to agree to disagree, especially on the concepts that we're covering within this course. You are going to disagree. It's a key concept within this course. The key design of this course is that I don't want to have a discussion where everybody says, I completely agree with you, I have nothing to add. I want discussions that say, I hear what you're saying, but from my perspective, I think something different. Because that leads to a good discussion, that leads to a good exercise where you can really explore what it is that you believe, and probably more importantly than what it is you believe, why it is that based on your perspective, based on your experiences, you're thinking in a specific way. Because if you can understand that, you're a step closer to understanding the perspectives and the views of other people. Now, in history, we have a lot of examples of conflict. Again, different perspectives. So kind of an early example of this is within Genesis in the Bible. Cain kills Abel. Basically, you're looking at kind of a challenge between two brothers, two different kind of occupations, if you want to think about it. Cain was a farmer, Abel was a nomadic herdsman. And so we see the situation that, a farmer is at odds with a herdsman, because they're going to want different things out of their lives. They're going to want different things with the land that they're working with. You're a farmer that spends a lot of time, planting their crops and cultivating their crops so that they grow through a season so they can be harvested at the end, is going to have a real problem if we end up with a situation where, a nomadic herdsman comes into the area and their herd of cattle, their herd of sheep, goats, whatever it is they've got, going to come through and eat all of the crop that the farmer has planted. So, that's, again, a little bit of an oversimplification of the biblical story. But again, it shows that there has been conflict, and there will continue to be conflict when you have these differing perspectives. This one, ended up in a bad outcome, Cain killing his brother. Take a look at this, the Great Wall of China. You can look at the fortification along China's northern border. You had the Chinese kind of south of the wall. You had nomadic tribes, nomadic herds, individuals, and going through, kind of conquering the world, kind of moving kind of back and forth. And so this Great Wall was built as a fortification, as a boundary, as a border between the Chinese Empire and the barbarian, written from the Chinese perspective, the barbarian invaders, the nomadic tribes that were going to come through and plunder and pillage all of the things the Chinese Empire was putting together and building. So they did that. Started out as an early fortification, about 2,500 years ago, and they continued to expand it and build it up to, what is the Great Wall of China in modern day. So, we take a look at it. They built it over a 2,000-year period, again, emphasizing the continued conflict between the Chinese on one side and those nomadic tribes on the other. Another example of this, again, 3 examples of kind of enforce these ideas. The fence cutting war that came out of the American West as a result of the Homestead Act of 1860. what we had during that period of time was an effort by the government to populate the West, to expand, to kind of build up these areas, re-land almost. Basically, the Homestead Act of 1862 said that if you would be a homesteader, if you would be, in essence, a farmer, you could go out there, take an area of unoccupied land and build a homestead, build a farm based on that. And basically, it would become your land after 5 years of residence. You put some sweat equity in it. You know, there's some fees associated with it. The fees are minuscule in relationship to the value of the land. But what we have is that situation is again, a conflict between the farmers and the nomadic herd. In this case, we were looking at settlers that were coming in, kind of fencing off their land so that they can plant their crops, have it grow over season, and harvest the crops at the end. And in conflict with that were the cattlemen, not truly nomadic herdsmen, but they were individuals that are going to take their herd of cattle and they're going to move it from place to place because the cattle are going to be kind of grazing in an area, and after they graze it, it's going to take some time for the grass, different plants they feed upon to grow back. So they're going to have to move on to a different area. And this becomes very difficult to move your herd of cattle and around if all of a sudden what used to be open land is now kind of fenced off. So because of that, the fence cutting war, where the cattlemen kind of going through, kind of cutting through, it's hard to see on this slide, cutting through the barbed wire fences that the settlers, the farmers put around to protect the land. Again, different perspectives of conflict because they were at odds with one another. The settlers wanted to protect their land, protect their crops. The cattlemen wanted to kind of graze through it and move through it and say damage the work that the farmers were putting into their homestead, putting into their farm. And excuse me, and this continues today, a conflict between urbanized areas and rural areas. And this is something that's been very consistent for a long period of time. But there's political sciences, political scientists at the University of Michigan that's actually gone through and plotted out Senate races, plotted out congressional races. But the important one is the presidential election results by county. And if we take a look at this, the red counties are greater than 70% GOP. The blue counties are greater than 70% DNC. So GOP for the Republicans, DNC for the Democrats. And the purple areas are basically in those mixed areas where you have kind of a mixture where you don't have a dominant Republican or a dominant Democrat base within the population. And so if we take a look at this map, just simply on spread of land mass within the United States, it's predominantly red because you've got all of these rural areas that tend to lean Republican in many circumstances. And then you have the urbanized areas. You've got New York, suburb, Boston, Northeast corridor, big population centers with Miami, kind of going out to the population centers in California, Detroit, Chicago, areas like that are going to tend to lean towards a Democratic base, Democratic mindset as they go about their lives and as they vote. And so again, we see this conflict with the ideas of the rural population in relationship to the urbanized population. And again, this is something you see during election season, pretty much for the last 15 or 20 years, a heightened sense of adversity, of conflict between government organizations, not government organizations, political parties, and therefore it's affected the ability of government to work in a way that serves the people of the United States. But again, the question is, how is it going to serve the people? You serve predominantly the rural and have policies that promote kind of the rural lifestyle, or do you promote the urban lifestyle? Because they have very different needs and they have very different ideals associated with Going into kind of a realm of science, should animals be used as research subjects? We're looking at individuals over here that all animals have rights. We shouldn't be doing any work on animals. We shouldn't be using animals as a food source. Over here, you've got individuals that say, let's use the animals respectively, but use the animals to learn about ourselves and learn about them and find cures for disease, to improve kind of surgical models, to improve kind of life. And so these, again, very different mindsets. And based on that very different mindset, it determines whether or not we use animals as research subjects. Is nuclear power an acceptable alternative energy source? There are all kinds of bad things about pollution, all kinds of bad things about carbon emissions from coal plants and gasoline and all of that. So we want to have an alternative source. And one example of that is nuclear energy. So, this one's from the Exelon Corporation, which is a company that runs a nuclear power plant. So, we've got nice cooling towers here. We've got some pretty flowers in the foreground. It's all a happy scene. Promoting the use of nuclear power plants and nuclear energy. Over here, we've got protesters saying, okay, it's not a good idea. We're using nuclear energy. We're using kind of radiation. We're using these uranium rods, which a lot of people don't understand. Radioactive and dangerous for long, long periods of time. We got to try to figure out, what is it that we're going to do with these uranium fuel rods, this energy that fuels nuclear power plants once they've been used up, because it's going to be tens or hundreds of generations before they're safe to be kind of exposed to people. So again, huge conflicts. Probably both of these individuals agree that we need to get away from coal plants and things like that, high pollution sources. But they have a very different view about how we should be getting our energy being produced. Another example of that, we'll spend some time with stem cells later on within this course. Should stem cells be used as a medical treatment? Stem cells are isolated from primarily embryos, but there are ways in which we can get stem cells now from like umbilical cord blood. So we have a little bit better understanding about this. But the idea is that, don't use me for spare parts, ban embryo research and ban cloning. And so that, is one viewpoint. Don't generate in vitro fertilization and embryos just for the sake of creating stem cells that can be used to treat disease. The flip side of that is individuals that are suffering from debilitating and degenerative diseases that are saying, we need replacement cells. We need a treatment for the disease that we're affecting. And so let's do some stem cell research and let's do some work and try to understand how to come up with replacement cells and cure, in this case, Parkinson's disease. So this is, a very big controversy that's going on. It's one that we're going to cover within the course. So we'll talk about the science of the stem cells. We'll talk about the different arguments for and against stem cell research. But there's no right or wrong answer. But we need to try to figure out what is the proper way to do this. Should there be limits? Should there be rules that have to be followed? It's allowed under these circumstances. These are the types of things that we're going to think about and talk about within this course. Now, the readings for this, again, posted in Canvas, Office of Human Resource Development at the University of Wisconsin-Madison has a very good kind of series of web pages about conflict. So I'm encouraging you to take a look at that. As always, if you have any questions, feel free to email me. And please come back for part 2 of this series of lectures. Thank you and have a great day.